For anyone that has ever been born or plans to give birth. Okay, birth and adoption in Judaism. So the duty of parenthood in Judaism, yes, I do have a microphone. Can you hear me okay? A little quiet. It's a little quiet. If I can make it louder. Hello, hello, hello.
Yes,
Whoa,
we can
whoa, whoa.
hear you. Shabbat shalom.
Feedback.
It's only loud, not loud here.
Okay. All right. So parents are obligated to provide love, care, and moral guidance. And raising a child I do believe, is the most important role in life. I agree with Rabbi Chaim Halevi Donin in the book To Be Jews, based on the book. And the early years shape a child's soul and future. Modern psychology will attest to that as well, that the beginning years of a child are the most formative. And, I'm sorry. Right. I was thinking, it's very hard when you adopt a child when they're older. People always say that. And I think the reason for that is because my personal opinion is that, with my own children, I've had them since birth, and I've been able to, the first few years of life, I was able to bond with them in a way that that required no commitment on their part. I showed them love, for the first, let's say, 3 years of their life without really requiring anything of them, right? You don't require much of a baby. You just are there to love them and hold them. And so a baby learns to trust his parents from birth. And then as they grow older, we start putting small requirements on them, and the responsibilities increase in time. But when you adopt a child in their adulthood, or maybe like in their later years of life, you kind of bypass that initial bonding stage to some degree. There still should be a bonding stage, but it's not the same. It's not the same, as with a small baby. Anyways, but in Judaism, parenting requires reflection and deliberate action. There's no important role in the life than raising a child to become a responsible adult. Okay, and this is an adult in Jewish eyes, not just in American eyes or human beings' eyes, but according to Torah, right? And in Judaism, it's taught that a child is born pure and without sin. It a little bit. It seems like a little bit different than Christianity, where it's often taught that you're born a sinner. Especially in Catholicism, you have to be baptized right away, or else you're going to hell. Right? That's a Catholic belief. But in Judaism, we see that a child is born pure and without sin, and there's a prayer that reflects that belief that we say in the mornings. It says it's Elohai, neshamah, shenatata bi, tehorah, which means, my God, the soul which you gave me is pure. Okay, and it goes on to say, you created it and you fashioned it, you breathed it into me. That's from the Talmud, Berakhot 60b. Now, in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 6, there's also a verse that says, blessed shall you be in your coming in and in your going out. Okay, and this is interpreted by our sages, at least in the Talmud. It can mean other things too, but one of the interpretations is that we are blessed when we are born. To be born is a blessing, just simply to be born. We're born pure, we're born innocent. And sin is acquired through life. It's not innate. And part of the primary roles of a parent is to protect that innocent soul from the influences of the world, from falling into sin and temptation. Not to say that the child will never sin or will never be tempted, and that we're supposed to keep them from all of it, but that we should show them the right path to avoid sin, and avoid temptation or overcome temptation when it comes, and to understand how to make teshuvah when we do make mistakes. Now, in Judaism, boys are named at the Brit Milah, or the circumcision, meaning if you have a name for your boy, the custom is don't tell anyone what your son's name is going to be. It's not until he is circumcised on the 8th day during the Brit Milah that the father will pronounce his name for the first time. For girls, it's a little bit different. For girls, what's supposed to happen is that after a girl is born, her father is supposed to get an aliyah to the Torah the next week. Okay, and after he does this aliyah, he announces the name of his baby girl, and there's also prayer, a mishaberach prayer for healing for both the mother and also the newborn baby. And then the Hebrew format for a Jewish person. So if you're a Jew, if you're a religious Jew, anyways, if you're an observant Jew, then you should have a Hebrew or Yiddish name, and then Ben, and then your father's name. If you're a convert, then the father is Avraham. We're rooted in through Avraham Avinu. We don't necessarily have a tribe, a specific tribe. We are grafted in through the great-grandfather of the Jewish people, which is Avraham Avinu, okay? My Hebrew name is Maim Bat Avraham. And even though Reuben has Jewish ancestry, because he was not an observant Jew, with a Jewish observant Jewish father, he did, sort of like a, what's the word? Baal Teshuvah, became a Baal Teshuvah, just like Atzayahu. But his name is also Reuven ben Avraham. So if you don't already have a Hebrew or Jewish name, you should definitely take on a Hebrew or Yiddish name if you don't already have one. If you do already have one, you can use that name, or you can pick a different one. Like if you become Baal Teshuvah, you can pick a different Hebrew name as well. Okay. Now, this Hebrew name, if you don't use it, then it's gonna lose its spiritual value. So, my children converted when they're older in life, so they're not used to their Hebrew names, and we didn't give them Hebrew names. So sometimes I use their Hebrew names, and sometimes I get lazy or forget, and I use their birth names. My other children, so that's for 2 of them. The other, how many children do I have? I have 7 children. The other 5, they all have Hebrew names, so it's easier. But I do try to use it even in common use as much as I can for my older 2 children as well, so they don't feel like it's strange. At the Shechita event that I went to, there were some who were like conservative and reform, and they weren't as familiar as with using their Hebrew names, except for in a religious context, meaning being called up to the Torah, or prayer for healing, those kinds of things. That's when you're supposed to use the Hebrew name. But Orthodox Jews, they will use one's Hebrew name as much as possible, like as if it's their new name, and then they'll only use their birth name if they have to for legal reasons. I actually do that as much as possible, except for like for business, I use my birth name. Anyways, yes, and in the book To Be a Jew by Chaim Donan Halevi, he encourages people to use their Hebrew names if it's not their birth name, or else it'll become futile and meaningless. But however, he also talks about how your Jewish identity is not about merely the name, but you also have to live it out in order to be really Jewish. Not that you're not a Jew if you don't use it, but that you should do more than just have a Jewish name. And there's another common custom among Ashkenazim to name their children after their deceased loved ones. Sometimes they do that, but they don't use it in everyday use, and so it becomes meaningless. But it's a way to honor a dead relative's heritage and memory, etc. It's good. He talks about how it's a good, there's good intention in it, but again, he just really tries to emphasize using your Hebrew name even in all contexts, not just in religious contexts. Also, the naming after deceased relatives is just a custom; it's not an obligation. Okay. Another thing is that giving someone a Jewish name doesn't mean that you're Jewish. If a Christian gives his child a Hebrew name, that doesn't automatically make them Jewish. It's not a mystical right. And Jewish status, at least especially in Orthodox Judaism, it depends on halakhic lineage and not just names. Now, there are a few names that are allowed, a few pagan names that are allowed in Orthodox Judaism. One of them is actually Alexander. And this is because of Alexander the Great. He did a lot for the Jewish people historically. And also the name Julian. It's also, that doesn't mean that they don't take on a Hebrew name, but what I've seen in action, we have a friend named Julian, and he became a Baal Teshuvah, which means he had a Gentile name before becoming observant, and then when he became observant, he took on a Hebrew name named Michael, but because his name was one of the names of a historical figure that was very helpful to the survival of the Jewish people, people in his Jewish community continue to use it even after he became a Baal Teshuvah. Baal Teshuvah means Lord of Repentance or Master of Repentance. That's what they call a Jew who was like in the world, fallen, and then came back. They call him a Baal Teshuvah. It means Master of Repentance. Okay. That's what that word Baal means. It means master or Lord, and it means that you are a master of it. You've conquered it. You've conquered something, or you're the head of something. Okay. Okay. And Hebrew naming, it used to be for a long time that Jews would give their children a Gentile name, like a pagan name, or maybe an anglicized name or something like that, a more cultural name, and then also a Hebrew name, unofficial from birth records. Since the reestablishment of Israel in 1948, it's come to be that Jews are now making their children's Hebrew name also their official birth name, because there's no longer as much of a fear of anti-Semitism and persecution. So, okay. And this is good because having a Jewish name can help reaffirm Jewishness, even though it's not the only thing that's required to make one a Jew, of course. Okay, now we'll talk about circumcision. Genesis chapter 17, verse 10 to 14 says, "This is my covenant which ye shall keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised." So circumcision is a sign of the eternal covenant between God and Israel. That's what it says. And we're supposed to do it on the 8th day after birth. You should do it on exactly the 8th day. If you can't do it on the 8th day, then do it as soon as possible, but don't do it before that. Okay. Failure to perform Brit Milah breaks the covenant. And so the obligation remains on the father until it's done, or until the child becomes an adult himself. Then the obligation falls on the child to get it done for himself. Okay, and the commandment is actually for the fathers. It's the fathers that are commanded to circumcise their children, but since we've kind of lost that practice, we delegate it to experts, mohels, or sometimes doctors. Now, the word Brit Milah, Brit means covenant, and Milah means circumcision. So Brit Milah, it means covenant of circumcision, and it should be done by a qualified mohel, not just a doctor. And this requires knowledge of Jewish law. There's a different way that mohels do it than a regular doctor. I had one of my midwives, her name was Trisha Boone. She worked for the Amish community in Ohio. And she said that the Amish would not hire doctors to do circumcisions. They always wanted a Jewish mohel to do circumcisions for their children. And because they prefer the way they do it, Amish are known for having much higher, health practices than normal like Americans. And one of the things that is different, I don't know about what all the differences are, but one of the things that is different, if it's a Jewish mohel who is not a doctor, if they're also a doctor, they might do the doctor way instead, okay? But if he's only a mohel, number one, they do not use regular anesthesia. They only give the baby grape juice. And this sounds strange, but it is enough to prevent the baby from feeling pain at that age. They kind of get drunk from is it grape juice? I thought it was grape juice.
No, it's wine. It's wine.
We gave our preach the phone.
Okay, we only had it can be we didn't have any wine in our house. And the rabbi said that grape juice was fine, that it would have the same effect. Who said it's wine? I think that's right, that it's supposed to be wine, but in the absence of grape juice, just like with kiddush, in the absence of wine, grape juice can also be used. And we saw it with Rafi. He did not cry. He only cried when we took off his diaper. When he was actually getting circumcised, he didn't cry. Even after that, he didn't really cry very much. He cried, I think, when we were putting his diaper back on again. So it really does work. So anyways, they don't use like any anesthetic drugs. Wine or maybe even grape juice is enough. Another thing that's different is they cut off much less skin than doctors are trained to do. So I think that's probably a good thing. And of course, a mohel would also would say the proper blessings. So if you get the circumcision done by a doctor, if you're a Jew, I'm sorry, I only know this one way. I'm not sure. There could be other ways, but the only way that I know is just like with a conversion. After the doctor does a circumcision, there's another special ceremony that is done, which is the Brit Milah ceremony. So let's say you get your baby circumcised by a doctor in the hospital. There's no actual Brit Milah ceremony, so you would, after it is circumcised by a doctor on the 8th day, let's say, you would afterwards go to a home or something like that. Synagogue could be, and then it doesn't have to necessarily be on the same day. I don't know if it's wise to do it the same day. I would have to check with some rabbis about the timing, if you do it in the hospital. And then you would do the Brit Milah ceremony with the blessings and hatafat dam Brit, which means a pinprick with a surgical, what's it called? That surgical thing, a lancet, the surgical lancet, to draw just a tiny bit of blood on the circumcision site. So I think this has to be done after the circumcision has already healed. And then it would go with all the blessings and things like that. However, so that's if they were circumcised in the hospital, and it's the same as if they are a convert, like let's say if they're an adult, then also you would get it done by a doctor. And then later on, after the circumcision is healed, we would do this Brit Milah ceremony, which includes blessings, special blessings, and also a festive meal. Most Jewish ceremonies include a festive meal. Okay. All right. Now, so I think for adults, it's almost always you have to do it these days with a doctor. I think for a mohel to do it, they will only do it with for a baby. As far as I know, I don't know if what
You're correct, Maya. I'm sorry, it's Mordecai Esper. How are you?
Oh, hi. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Most mohelim will not do adult circumcisions. A couple of years ago, and I actually put this in the chat, I had the honor of overseeing a circumcision of an adult male who was born to Jewish parents, but he was not circumcised as an infant for reasons related to the Holocaust. And at that time, it had to be done by a doctor, but I wound up saying the traditional prayers and blessings for it. So yes, you are correct.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. And the covenant of circumcision is always being threatened by different nations and governments and countries are always trying to take away our right to do this. I think it's very understandable. It seems almost barbaric, this ceremony, but I think this is also one way that we prove that we really do have faith in the Bible, in God, because we're saying, no, it's crazy as it may sound. You know, God told us to do it in the Bible, so we're going to do it. So observant Jews follow this ceremony, have followed this ceremony throughout history, regardless of persecution. If it's not allowed, usually Jews just do it in secret. They do it in hiding. Okay? Or they wait until it is safe to do it as soon as possible.
Public. And they won't participate in that.
Sheila's saying that they don't, that baby boys don't remember the pain. Yeah, that's true. For sure. Okay, so again, it's supposed to be on the 8th day. If the baby was born at nightfall, it should be done on the 8th day after that. But Brit Milahs or at least the ceremonies are always held during the daytime, preferably in the morning. It can be delayed, but it should only be delayed for health reasons. And if you're not sure if a baby can withstand the circumcision and be healthy through it, then you should postpone it until the baby is medically clear. This might be necessary if the baby is born premature, right? Or with other kinds of complications. Yes, so Rabbi Chaim Donin Halevi says that even if, you want to get the mic to say something? That even if it's Shabbat, it should be done. Even Yom Kippur. However, sometimes it's not possible to find someone who will do it on that day. So you might have to do it the day after. Okay, Ahava wants to say something, the midwife in training.
Right. We were talking one time in the clinic about circumcision, and the midwife said that when babies are born, they don't have a lot of vitamin K in their body, and so they're not able to clot their blood very well, and so bleeding problems are very serious. But once they're 8 days old, that's when they start to develop the vitamin K.
Yeah, I heard actually that the 8th day is the day that you have the most vitamin K, I think, in your life, or maybe as a child. So it's not just better. I heard that the 8th day is the best day, and we made the mistake of not caring about what the Bible literally said, and we actually circumcised our first son on the first day of his birth, and he had bleeding issues, and the doctor said, and he was in intensive care for a few weeks, and the doctor 2 or 3 days. Virgil, I wasn't able to breastfeed him. I remember that. That could happen with just 2 days. Okay, just a few days, Ruben said, and the doctor said that he had bleeding problems, but he really didn't. We just circumcised him on the wrong day. After that, he didn't have bleeding. He didn't have any bleeding problems. So we should listen to the Bible. This is the blessing that's said during Brit Milah, Baruch Atah Hashem, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshenu b'mitzotav v'tzivanu lechakniso b'brito shel Avraham Avinu, which means who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to bring him into the covenant of our father Abraham. That's what the end of the blessing says. And then the guest's response would be to say Kashem Sheniknas Labrit, which means just as he entered the covenant, so may he enter into a study of Torah, into marriage, and into good deeds. So we're planning his life right on that 8th day. And this reflects lifelong spiritual milestones in Jewish life. Now, there is another ceremony that has been introduced in modern days by the conservative and reform movement called the Brit Bat. I think it's a beautiful addition. I do appreciate some of the things that the conservative movement does, and one of them is adding a special ceremony for for Jewish females. One second. So we've done the Brit Lat for our daughters. I don't know if we've done them for all of them, but we've done them for at least some of our daughters. That's another beautiful ceremony. Since it is a custom, it's not really tied to a commandment like the circumcision ceremony. It's more loose in terms of how it's structured. You know, it doesn't, you can kind of make it the way you want it. Okay. So then during the Brit Milah, the child is named, and whoever it holds there's a person called the Sandek who holds the baby while the mohel is circumcising him. We didn't do that though. Our mohel just put him on a table. But this is supposed to be a special role. I'm not sure how many people do it that way, or if people just do, lay the baby down on the table. It might be a little bit more accurate if you just lay the baby down on a table, so that you know that no one's going to flinch. And I think they kind of tied the baby down with a kind of like a something that would hold the baby in place. Okay, and it's preferred to have a minyan during the Brit Milah. This symbolizes community support and spiritual lineage. And it's not required, but it's nice to have a minyan and a festive meal after that. It's supposed to be a cause of joy within the community. Okay, so sometimes what we'll do is we'll kind of forego a baby shower for a Brit Milah ceremony or a baby naming ceremony, which in some cases may or may not be, more convenient for the couple. I don't know. I think it's convenient because I don't like to know the gender, the sex of my baby before birth. So I don't know the sex until after it's born. So then people know what to buy, whether boys' clothing or girls' clothing. Okay. There's some people, and we had this once. We did a gior conversion ceremony for someone who was born circumcised. I'm not sure what that means. I obviously didn't see it. So they just did the hatafat brit during the conversion ceremony. And again, it just means doing a pinprick of blood under the corona where the circumcision would be. Do you have a question? Okay. And this affirms entry into the covenant, and it helps to maintain halakhic continuity, even if medical circumcision came beforehand. Okay. All right. Okay, now let's talk about the pidyon haben. I realize I don't think we ever did this for our oldest son, Avichail. I think we need to do this. In Numbers, chapter 18, verse 15 to 16, it says, the firstborn of man you shall redeem. And so this is a mitzvah that is incumbent upon every Israelite father. It symbolizes redemption from the Kohen required for firstborn sons. And it marks a spiritual transfer from priestly service. And this ceremony affirms that all the first and best belong to God. And the origin of it is because in Numbers, Hashem said, for every firstborn among the children of Israel is mine. So originally, all the firstborn sons were consecrated for priestly service. It wasn't supposed to be just the tribe of Levi. It was supposed to be the firstborn from every tribe. But after the golden calf, the Levites replaced the firstborn sons. And then Hashem said, now I'm going to take the Levites instead of every firstborn. So because they did that, we have to give a special offering to a Levite to take his place. Okay, just kind of honoring that commandment. Now, you have to do this only if a child is male and is the firstborn of his mother, which means that he opens the womb, which means it was a natural birth. If it was a C-section, it's actually not required. I don't know. I don't like that idea. I'm not sure if that's actually halakha or if that's a modern custom. It doesn't sound right to me. I'm not sure if C-sections were known to the sages back in that day that they actually ruled on this, or if this is post-Talmudic ruling. So if it is post-Talmudic ruling, then this, I would say, could be wrong. Okay. And it might be safe to err on the side of caution and go ahead and at least give the Pidyon Haben offering even without a blessing. Okay, even without saying that this is required, but still do it anyways, just to, just in case. Okay, so all right. Oh, okay. So if you can't find a Kohen, which is sometimes very hard to do, and you don't want to just give it to someone, just because someone's last name is Kohen, that doesn't mean they're really a Kohen. They have to, there's certain requirements to preserve the status of a legal Kohen. Meaning, when I say legal Kohen, meaning someone who can rightfully serve in the temple. For example, they can't have illegitimate marriages and other things. There's other requirements for a valid Kohen. And if they do any such of these things, they might retain the last name Kohen, but they're not actually a Kohen anymore, at least not legally. They disqualify themselves as a Kohen that is valid for the service of the temple. No, they don't. And also, a qualified Kohen doesn't necessarily have the last name Kohen. Yeah, so what you can do if you want to do a Pidyon Haben and you can't find a valid Kohen that you're sure of is a Kohen, is you can do the ceremony, but give the donation, the amount, to the Temple Institute, because they have knowledge of valid Kohens who are actually even trained to do temple service once the temple is set up again. Okay. Now, so this Pidyon Haben ceremony is held after the baby is a month old. Therefore, it's held on the 31st day after the birth, and the day that they're born counts as day one. Okay. And Jewish months are never longer than 30 days. That's why we have the number 31. And it shouldn't be held on a Shabbat, though, or festivals or fast days. Unlike the Brit Milah, it is postponed if the 31st day falls on a Shabbat or festival or fast day. And also, if the father is not in town or something, then it can be delayed until he comes back as well. So it's not as strict as the circumcision, Brit Milah. And the obligation is incumbent on the son, on the father, until the son turns 13. After the son turns 13, then then the son is a Jewish adult, and so he has to do it. It's up to him to do it. The Pidyon Haben ceremony. Talking about the Pidyon Haben ceremony. Redemption of the firstborn. Okay, so again, a Kohen's supposed to perform it, and it can be arranged remotely. Like I said, you can give it to the Temple Institute, and it's customary to use 5 silver coins, and coins represent the original 5 shekels commanded in Torah. It doesn't necessarily have to be a certain value. It doesn't have to be like, silver, a whole ounce or anything. It just has to be coins. I think they even have like an Israeli shekel that is silver. I'm not sure what the actual worth of it is. Okay, and then the structure of the ceremony is that the father presents the child to the Kohen, and the Kohen asks, "Do you wish to give me your son? Do you wish to give me your son or redeem him?" And the father responds, "To redeem him." And the father holds the coin and recites. The full blessing is not here, but basically, Berakhot, blah, 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 al Pidyon Haben, which means blessed is he, yada, 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 who commanded us concerning the redemption of the firstborn son. Okay. And had someone asked me once, they said, what if you don't want to what if you don't want to give the priest money? What if you want to give the son? Just like, I guess, Samuel's mother did, And I said, I don't know. I don't think you can do that according to Torah, because the Torah says, do this, you got to do this. But I would say the intention is good. And I think that we should do that anyways. We should dedicate all of our children to Hashem. But the way to do that is to dedicate them and raise them up in a life of Torah and mitzvot, commandments, and love for God and love for others, right? Okay. Then the father recites the Shechianu. That's the blessing that we always say when it's a very special time that has come, for the first time or for a long time. And then the Kohen takes the money and waves it over the child's head, and he says, "This is in place of this. So this is in place of him." And then the Kohen's supposed to recite the priestly blessing, and then the ceremony concludes with a cup of wine, and it marks the joy of completing a sacred mitzvah. Question. Why is wine only from grapes? Because that's how it was understood in the Bible. That when you said wine, it meant juice from grapes. Okay, and then adoption. And now we're going to talk about adoption. So Jewish law views the parent-child bond as irrevocable. So just because someone adopts someone, that doesn't nullify their relationship as a parent and child with their birth parents. Okay, though there is a legal transfer of ownership through adoption, it's not necessarily a Torah transfer of ownership. Okay, however, there is, according to Torah and Judaism, spiritual parenthood, and this is honored and meaningful. We can see this spiritual parenthood even with, it was with Yosef's father, who is Yaakov, right? Yaakov, Israel adopted two of Yosef's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and it's so that they could have part of the inheritance among the tribes. Okay, so there is spiritual parenthood, but that spiritual adoption did not nullify Yosef's parenthood. Okay, and it says in the Talmud, tractate Megillah, that he who raises someone else's child is regarded as if he had actually brought him into the world physically. Okay, because again, if you remember from one of the first slides, parenting is supposed to be not only providing for their physical needs, but also their spiritual needs. Okay, and so adoption is an act of chesed. It's an act of loving kindness, and also when converts, it's a very very strong custom that when someone wants to convert to Judaism, that they are adopted by spiritual parents. So the halakhic status of adopted Jewish children. So if you are adopted, it does not change your tribal status. So if you are a Kohen, and your father is a valid Kohen, you are still a Kohen, even though you are adopted by a non-Kohen, okay? But if you do something to invalidate your Kohenship, then that's that. But adoption in and of itself does not remove your tribal lineage. Now, if you are adopted and your birth parents never did the Pidyon Haben ceremony for you, then your adoptive parents are required to do this to make sure it gets done. And then there's also a spiritual naming that Pidyon Haben. Yeah, firstborn, yeah.
No,
Pidyon Haben,
no.
yes. It's only for the firstborn of non-Kohanim. You wouldn't do it then. You would just give someone's Sheila's saying, what if you don't know if you're if you're a firstborn or not. And I would say you could just give an offering to the Temple Institute or to a Kohen, but not say the blessing for it. That's the safe way to do it. When in doubt, do the mitzvah, but don't say the blessing. That's usually how it goes in Judaism. So spiritual naming is also permitted by the adoptive parent. So for Nathaniel and Valerissa, we didn't officially legally adopt them, but we did like a spiritual sort of adoption since we're raising them as Jews. And so they have Hebrew names. Nathaniel already had a Hebrew name, but he wanted to pick another Hebrew name too. And then Hatafat Damrit might be needed. If the child is Jewish and he already had Hatafat Damrit, then he doesn't have to obviously have another one. But if the child is not Jewish and then the parents want the adopted child to become a Jew, then they may need to do Hatafat Damrit. And if let's say the father is a Kohen, if the adoptive father is a Kohen, but the child was not born a Kohen, the child does not become a Kohen if the adoptive father adopts him. This is Jewish law, this is halakha, and this is historical. And so this is going to be a little bit controversial, but Yeshua had to have been the birth son of Yosef in order to be of the tribe of Levi, just like his father Yosef was. Excuse me, Yehuda. I'm sorry, Judah. So his father Yosef was of the tribe of Judah, and Yeshua, in order to be of the tribe of Judah and to have halakhic authority to be a king of Israel, he had to be his birth father, had to have been from the tribe of Judah also. A lot of Christians say that Yeshua was adopted by Yosef. That would disqualify him as being the line of the tribe of Judah, basically. So then, how do we reconcile the virgin birth with Yeshua? And there is a midrash that talks about, it's from a Kabbalistic book called Sefer Raziel, and it talks about how an angel can implant the sperm of a man into a mother's womb. It's like a heavenly, what's the word called? Yeah, heavenly insemination, not artificial insemination, but divine insemination, kind of like that. God can do anything.
Excuse me, Mayim, if you don't mind, may I interject something?
Sure.
There is actually a Talmudic provision, and I apologize, I do not remember the tractate, but it does say that a child is legitimately yours if it is born to your legal wife and conception was not the result of fornication or adultery. So that could also, imply a virgin birth as well. But I mean, I think that midrash is wonderful. Please don't get me wrong. I just thought you might want to know about the Talmudic provision.
A child being legally yours, I don't think that necessarily means tribally yours.
Well, I didn't say legally yours. I said legitimately yours.
Well, again, a child being legitimately yours, I don't think that necessarily also means transferring tribal lineage to that child, because that child had a father. You can adopt someone and they're yours, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily of your tribe. I'm not sure when that would apply. What you just said, I'm thinking when that would apply is if the mother is a convert, maybe, and the converts.
From what I learned, it was mostly applied to married women who were raped by someone who was not their husband, obviously.
Okay.
Because
yeah,
but I mean, I'm just saying a virgin birth could also
we don't. I don't think we want to go there with Yeshua, because we don't want to give any credence to the Jewish accusation that his mother Miriam was a harlot.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Because there is also that accusation. So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think this perspective, I think this perspective is fulfills both the virgin birth, possibility of a virgin birth, but it also fulfills Jewish law, halakha, and it's also the same way that some of our sages have said, or some midrashim have said, that other miraculous births happened, like Avraham and Sarah, like they may have been too old to even do the act, but yet she still got pregnant and gave birth, things like that. And I'd also like to say that there was an ancient Jewish sect called, I'm gonna forget their names. They were it wasn't the Ebionim. There was an ancient Jewish sect, and the name of the sect is escaping me, but they were believed.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember it either.
Yeah, we don't remember the name of the sect.
Yeah.
And they didn't accept all the gospels. They only accepted the Gospel of Matthew, which has no mention of the virgin birth. And they didn't think there was any such thing as a virgin birth at all. They just believed in Yeshua as Messiah, for naturally. And I'm not saying that they're right and that the virgin birth is wrong. I'm just saying that being born of a virgin is not a Jewish requirement for Messiah. Okay, and there were many divine births in the Bible. There was never necessarily a virgin birth, but there were other divine births. I'm just throwing that out there. I know it might sound a little bit controversial, but it's an idea. You don't have to believe in it, or not. You don't have to believe in it, but I'm just telling you that if you tell someone that you believe Yeshua is the Messiah, and you don't link him to someone who is of the tribe of Judah, halakhically, then they're going to say your Messiah is invalid. That's going to be one of the qualifications for any Jew to say if someone is a Messiah or not. Anyways, I don't want to dwell on that too much. It's just an interpretation, okay? I'm not saying that you have to believe in this or whatever, but I'm saying that if you want to convince a Jew that Yeshua is Messiah and he knows his Judaism and he knows Torah and he knows Jewish law, that will be an immediate no for him if you tell him that he didn't have an earthly father, that only Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh was his father. But if you can still prove a virgin birth through this way, this Jewish midrash. Anyways, it's good to do due diligence before adopting someone, to confirm if the child is firstborn to the natural mother, to see if you should do pidyon haben or not. Atzal I'd love to know if you're a firstborn or not, if you don't know. Anyways, or to determine if either parent is from a Kohen or Levitical lineage, and if so, then teach him the special law so that he can keep his Kohenship. Also to ascertain if the natural father is Jewish. If the natural father is Jewish, then their tribe and maybe certain obligations. And also investigate possible biological siblings to avoid marriage prohibitions. This is more important. This really becomes very important if you're adopting a Jew and you live in a Jewish community. There's a lot of like inbreeding and stuff like that that's happening. So anyways, Jewish law requires knowing halakhic identity for future mitzvot. It's important, so that you don't violate certain things, or so that you can keep certain things that you need to for that child. Another thing is that adopted children should say Kaddish, or the special prayers, for their adoptive parents. Okay. And also full mourning rites can apply for their adoptive parents as if for their natural parents. So in terms of honoring their parents, they would honor both their adoptive parents as well as their birth parents. So this reflects a very deep spiritual and familial bond. And Jewish values can elevate gratitude and reverence And there are mourning customs that we have in Judaism that reinforce belonging and respect. In terms of adopting non-Jewish children, a child born to a non-Jewish mother is not automatically Jewish. If just because a Jew adopts someone doesn't mean that they are become a Jew. Even if they live a very devout life, it doesn't validate an identity without an official conversion. This is Jewish law. So just because you give someone a Hebrew name or a synagogue blessing, it doesn't mean that they are Jewish. A halakhic conversion is required for Jewish status. And the requirements are that there should be a bet din of at least 2, but better 3 qualified. This says rabbis, but they don't actually have to be rabbis. They can just be observant Jews. They have to be for an Orthodox conversion. They have to be Shomer Shabbos, which means they have to keep Shabbat. They can't. One of the big things is no driving on Shabbat, no working on Shabbat, etc. That's a major qualification for Beit Din, which is why Rav Reuven or Rav Safa and the people that we call on for our Beit Din, they are Shomer Shabbos, even though we do understand if people have to drive to attend our services for our Beit Din. However, we require a higher observance level. The third person is often Rav Michael Julian, or sometimes it's I forgot the names of Ariel, Rav Ariel Manning. Yonasan. Yeah, we have different friends who are part of our Beit Din, depending on just who's available. Some of them are Messianic, some of them believe in Yeshua, some of them are not, but they are friendly and open to us, and they respect that we are observant of the covenant of Torah and things like that. Now for boys, they have to do both Brit Milah or Hatafat Dam Brit, which we just talked about, and also immersion in a kosher mikveh. For girls, obviously, they don't have to do Brit Milah. They only have to immerse in the mikveh, in a kosher mikveh, and then a Hebrew name is given to them. Usually the parents choose it, but then I guess can call them by it for the first time. And then also education in Torah life should follow that conversion. Shouldn't just be like you do it and then forget about it. You have to fortify that conversion with education. Judaism is a very erudite religion. Christianity, if you don't do anything else, they'll still be like, oh, okay, whatever. You're still a good Christian as long as you mean well or whatever. In Judaism, if you don't show that you are studied and that you know our holy text, our Torah, and you're not observant, then people will doubt. They'll scoff at you. It's very important that you back up your faith with knowledge also. It's very important. And I would say even in the Brit Hadashah, it talks about how we have to study to show ourselves approved, right? And so that's from Judaism. Study is very, very important. It's not about just whatever we feel in the spirit or whatever, okay? So if you don't have a kosher mikveh, or if the circumcision was not done properly, then that could invalidate the conversion. But if it was a kosher mikveh and it was a proper circumcision, but let's say the blessings weren't said, they were accidentally not said or something like that, they didn't know any better, something like that, then it's not invalid. But oftentimes what communities will do is that if you don't have a Beit Din present, let's say, so self-conversions are actually valid in Judaism, but if there is no Beit Din to sign it that they trust, then they'll make you do a gir l'chumrah. That means a conversion for strictness sake, which doesn't mean that you're not a Jew. It just means we're going to do the conversion ceremony again so that we know for sure that it was done properly. It doesn't mean that you're not a Jew. Doing a gir l'chumrah doesn't mean that they're questioning your Jewishness. It means that they're questioning whether the ceremony was done properly, okay? So if you ever, in the future, wish to join a Jewish community and you tell them that you were converted through, don't say Benei Avraham if you're not joining a Messianic community, because they're probably going to refuse it. We don't do conversions under our name, Benei Avraham. We do it under one of our Orthodox rabbis' names, so that it's at least Orthodox and halakhic, even though maybe not accepted by all. And in that case, because it is Orthodox and halakhic, what some of our converts have done is, if they wanted to enter another different Jewish community that is not Messianic, what they'll do is they will make them do a gir l'chumrah, which means they basically do this conversion ceremony again, which is not, it's really not a big deal. Okay, so if you do find for some reason that it wasn't done properly, then you can just request to do gir l'chumrah. And then, of course, ongoing education is important. And once we know that the conversion is valid, then the child is fully Jewish, and there should be no distinction between that child and a natural born Jew. And adult conversion is very similar. The only difference is that the adult is required to have some level of knowledge. It doesn't necessarily have to be, years of study as is commonly done in Orthodox circles today, but there should be some study of some of the Talmud says that adults should know some of the hard laws and some of the easy laws. Okay, they don't have to know all of them, but they have to know some of the hard ones and some of the easy ones. And specifically, I think it was Shabbat and the laws about leaving the corners of your field for the poor. I would say that that's probably not a good one for today, since most of us don't do that anymore. Maybe a different kind of commandment could be considered one of the lesser, the least of these commandments, those types of laws. I would say the commands that are the heavier laws are those that require, that are supposed to require death penalty in the days of the Sanhedrin, right? And the lesser laws would be things that, maybe they required just some lashes or something. The commandments are weighty laws. Yeah, they're pretty weighty. Yeah, the commandments are pretty weighty. That's part of the Ten Commandments. Those are what? They're weighty laws? I would say yes. I would say that all converts should know at least the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, they go together.
Yeah, the first few commandments pertain to our relationship with Hashem, and the last few 10 of the 10 commandments pertain to our relationship with other human beings. But the fifth one, the middle one, honor your father and mother, the sages say that has to do both with your relationship with God, the Father, and also your relationship with your earthly parents. And of course, someone who converts to Judaism has to accept the yoke of the commandments. That's the whole point of conversion. That is the essence of conversion, is that you have accepted the covenant of Torah and have committed to walk in the commandments. Doesn't mean that you have to know all the commandments. There's even a famous story in the Talmud about this man who went to Shammai and he said, I want to be the high priest. And Shammai's like, get out of here. You don't even know what you're talking about. And then he went to Hillel and said, I want to be a high priest. Convert me. I want to be a high priest. And Hillel was like, okay, sure. Let's convert you. And you got to study the laws so that you can be a high priest, right? And then he converted, and then he started studying laws to be a high priest, and he realized he was not qualified to be a high priest. But then he still thanked Hillel, and he said, thank you for still allowing me to, basically become a Jew. Okay. And then, so you should definitely accept the mitzvah sincerely. Okay. It shouldn't be a culture that you want to enter into. It should be a covenant, a marriage contract, a marriage covenant that you want to enter into, a covenant between you and Hashem, which also includes a covenant with his people, because Judaism is it's a communal religion. It's not meant to be lived out by ourselves. It's meant to be lived out in community. Okay, timeline and identity. It's very, I thought it was really surprising that Rabbi Chaim Donin Halevi says that a typical conversion takes 6 to 12 months. He was Orthodox, and that used to be the typical Orthodox timeline. Now, 6 to 12 months is the conservative and reform timeline, and the Orthodox timeline is more like 1 to 2 years. So ours is a year now. It is a year now. We ask people to be with us for a whole holiday cycle and study with us and learn with us. Because we've had some issues with people who we didn't require that of them in the past, and just some bad experiences with not really understanding like what all is required and things like that. But it also varies according to the background and level of commitment. There's some people that come and they already know a lot. They've been studying for a long time. They know both Torah and Judaism a lot. And so we sometimes fast track it. It really depends on the person, but typically it's a year. And the convert is adopted into the people of Israel. And for religious purposes, especially, we use the name Ben or Bat, Avraham, like for being called up to the Torah, etc. We do make an exception if a whole family converts. We use the children's parents' name instead of Ben Avraham. We'll say Ben, Yitzhak, if the father also converted. I'm not sure though if that's halakhic or if that's just something that we do because it's our custom. I'm not sure if it's halakhic, but it is our custom to do that. And then a convert, whether a child or an adult, is fully accepted as a Jew in all areas of life and halakha. So we don't do that on their certificates. On their certificates, it's not proper. It's supposed to be Avraham. But for being called up to the Torah or something like that, then we will sometimes use their. All right. Do we have any comments, questions? Hopefully, no complaints.
Well, I hope you all didn't mind my interjecting earlier. If I was out of line, I apologize.
No. No, discussion makes it nice and lively, I think.
And incidentally, Mayim, there are rabbis that agree with y'all's opinion about when the family converts like that. Another thing that's discussed, and different rabbis have differing opinions, that if someone who is the child of a Jewish father and not a Jewish mother voluntarily converts, are they allowed to take Ben or Bat, their father's name?
Can you say that again? Can you say that again?
If the child of a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother voluntarily converts, are they allowed to take Ben or Bat, their father's name, as opposed to Ben or Bat Avraham?
I know that we would certainly allow that at Benei Avraham.
Yeah.
In terms of an actual certificate, I'm not sure. I would have to ask a rabbi.
Different rabbis have differing opinions. I've asked different rabbis from different sects on that. So,
how about Orthodox? Is there an Orthodox rabbi that would allow it?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure conservative and reform would definitely allow it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about Orthodox.
The
But,
one Orthodox rabbi I had a good rapport with, I've lost touch with him, and he was in favor of that. So,
okay, that's nice to know. That's nice to know. And the reason why we do the Orthodox way as much as possible, although not always,
yeah,
is so that if we're ever in need of support from an Orthodox rabbi or community, that our members can get that support,
right. The one thing that's a little more hotly debated is if the child of a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother converts, are they considered a member of their father's tribe, or are they considered tribeless?
Well, according to Rabbi Chaim Halevi Donin, they keep their tribal lineage.
Okay, yeah, and I've heard differing opinions on that one too. So, yeah.
I mean, I think I like Rabbi Chaim Levidon's opinion on that.
Oh yeah, I think his books are wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And what, you want to say something?
I said that
Okay.
I think that the group was the Ebionites,
Oh, yeah.
and then there was a Catholic manuscript that was done in the 12th century called Against Gnosis, which is against Gnosticism, and they mentioned a small Nazarene sect that um, I don't know if they were just trying to be disparaging at them, that either was the Ebionites or an undisclosed Nazarene sect that called Shaul the enemy, and also they only used the gospel, the Hebrew gospel of Matthew as their primacy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for for reminding me about that. All right. Okay, everyone. Well, I wanted to share again that I'm going to stop recording first. That we